The scent of blood and pine was a warning, not a memory. It clung to the back of my throat, metallic and sweet, as I shoved another handful of damp earth over the shallow grave. My breath came in ragged, white puffs in the freezing air, each one a tiny betrayal of my location. The forest around me was a cathedral of silent, snow-laden firs, but the silence was a lie. It was the quiet of a held breath, of something waiting. They're closer. The thought wasn't mine alone. It was a primal whisper in my marrow, a vibration in the space between my ribs. The wolf under my skin, the one I'd spent 23 years pretending didn't exist, paced and snarled. It wanted out. It wanted to fight. It didn't understand that fighting meant dying. "Easy," I whispered to myself, to the beast. My voice was raw. "Easy, Tessa." Saying my own name was an anchor. Tessa. Not the name he'd snarled when he found me gone. Not the title he'd tried to force on me. Just Tessa. The human who stocked shelves at a pharmacy. The girl who preferred tea to whiskey and books to brawls. That girl was buried under 3 days of running, of terror, of feeling a bond she never asked for try to drag her back like a fishhook in her soul. I finished covering the evidence of my kill. A rabbit, swiftly taken, necessary fuel, and stood, my joints protesting. The wind shifted, slicing through my thin jacket, and that's when I caught it. Him. Not Owen, not yet. This was different. This scent was like dark coffee, aged leather, and a crackling fireplace. It was warmth and authority, and it wrapped around the compulsive, sickly sweet pull of Owen's claim like a strangling vine. It was foreign, it was alpha, and it was close. I ran. Branches whipped at my face, a stinging counterpoint to the burn in my lungs. The world narrowed to the thud of my boots on frozen ground, the crash of my own passage, the frantic drum of my heart. Little did I know, running toward that new scent was my first mistake. I was so focused on escaping the familiar horror behind me that I didn't consider the new danger ahead. I burst into a small clearing, moonlight painting the snow in stark blue and black, and skidded to a halt. He stood in the center, as if he'd been waiting for centuries. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long, dark coat that seemed to drink the moonlight. He wasn't looking at me. His head was tilted, listening to the forest. His profile was all severe lines and quiet command. This was no tracker from Owen's pack. This was something else. "You're making enough noise to wake the human dead," he said, his voice a low, resonant rumble that vibrated in my own chest. He still didn't turn. "Get out of my way," I gasped, my body already coiling to dart around him. Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were the color of a storm-washed sky, gray and piercing. They didn't just see me. They scanned me, stripping away the dirt, the fear, the human pretense. I felt it like a physical touch, a cool, assessing pressure against my skin, my spirit, the writhing wolf within. My own wolf, which had been snarling in panic, went utterly still. Not in fear. In recognition. A low, involuntary sound escaped my throat. His nostrils flared. A flicker of something, surprise, intensity crossed his impassive features. "You're claimed." It wasn't a question. It was a verdict, and his tone frosted over. "I'm leaving," I corrected, forcing steel into my voice. The mate bond to Owen gave a sickening, possessive tug, a reminder stamped on my very essence. This new alpha's presence made it feel like a cheap brand compared to a crown. "You're trailing blood, fear, and a bond that reeks of desperation across my territory," he said, taking one deliberate step toward me. His movement was pure predator grace, utterly silent on the snow. "That makes you my problem. I'll be gone by sunrise. I'm not your problem, I'm just passing through." "Nothing just passes through the Blackwood Pack lands." Another step. The air between us grew charged, thick with the scent of him and the wild panic of me. "Who is he? The one who put that stink on you?" The protective lie was on my lips, none of your business. But the truth tumbled out, compelled by his alpha aura or my own exhausted despair. Owen, alpha of the Ridge River pack. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Owen Fletcher. He said the name like a curse. And he let his claimed mate run. That doesn't track unless you stole something. The accusation was a spark to my tinder-dry fear. I stole myself. His stormy eyes held mine. The pull was there, an undeniable, terrifying magnetism. It was nothing like the obsessive, crushing weight of Owen's bond. This was a current, deep and powerful, and if I waded into it, I might never find the shore again. The chemistry was immediate and absolute, a silent war between my need to flee and a deeper, older need to step closer. "Francis," a voice called from the tree line. A man and a woman emerged. The man, Matthew, was built like a linebacker with a cautious, watchful gaze. The woman, Emily, was slender, with sharp, intelligent eyes that darted between me and the alpha, Francis. So that was his name, Francis. It suited the old-world gravity of him. "We caught the Ridge River stench," Matthew said, his voice a gravelly baritone. "She bring trouble." "She is trouble," Francis said, his gaze never leaving me. "A runaway claimed mate. Owen will come for her." Emily hissed through her teeth. "That's not trouble, Francis. That's a war. You know what he's like. We can't harbor a rival alpha's mate. It's suicide." Harbor. The word sparked a pathetic flare of hope I instantly crushed. "I'm not asking for harbor," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. "Just passage. I just need to get to the highway." "He'll tear through our lands to find you," Matthew said, pragmatic and grim. "He won't ask permission. He'll see it as an act of aggression. A stolen mate is a death sentence." Francis was silent, studying me. The internal battle was clear on his face, the strategic mind of an alpha versus something else. "Why?" he asked, the single word loaded. "Why run from your mate?" The question hung in the air. I could give the easy answer. The true answer was a canyon of shame and horror. That was my first mistake, telling the truth. But I was so tired of lies. "He didn't want a mate," I said, the words ash in my mouth. "He wanted a trophy, a thing to break. The night of the claiming, he told the whole pack he'd make me submit or make me bleed. I chose a third option." Emily's expression softened a fraction. Matthew's hardened. Francis's remained unreadable, but his scent spiked with something dark and furious. A howl tore through the night, far too close. It wasn't a lonely cry to the moon. It was a hunting call, coordinated and closing in. Owen's voice, amplified by fury and power, echoed in its wake. "Tessa!" My blood turned to ice. The bond in my chest yanked, a psychic leash trying to snap me back. I stumbled, a whimper escaping me. Francis moved. In a blur of speed, he was in front of me, his broad back blocking my view of the forest. His presence was a wall against Owen's psychic shout. "Matthew! Perimeter, delay them. Do not engage. Emily, get her to the safe house. The stone one, deep territory." "Francis, think about this," Matthew began. "Now," the command in Francis's voice was absolute, a wave of alpha power that made my knees weak. Matthew vanished into the shadows without another word. Emily grabbed my arm. Her grip was firm, not unkind. "Come on, unless you want all this noble interference to be for nothing." I resisted, looking at Francis's back. "Why are you doing this?" He half-turned, his stormy eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Because no one should be a thing to break." Then the glow intensified. Bones began to crackle and realign under his skin, a series of sickening, powerful pops. His coat strained as his form expanded. "Run, Tessa, and don't look back." Emily pulled me hard, and I ran with her, deeper into the Blackwood forest. The last thing I saw over my shoulder was Francis. his human form dissolving in a surge of fur and muscle, a massive, dark-furred wolf shaking itself free of clothing and rising with a silent snarl toward the approaching hunt. The last thing I heard was the beginning of a savage, challenging roar that was entirely wolf. What happened next in that clearing, I don't know. We ran until my lungs were fire, and the sounds of pursuit were replaced by the rush of a nearby river. Emily never slowed, her movements sure and silent. She finally dragged me into a hidden crevice in a rock face, behind a curtain of frozen ivy, and into a small, cold stone hut. "Stay here. Breathe. Don't make a sound," she ordered, her sharp eyes scanning the darkness outside before she slipped back out, presumably to guard the approach. Alone, I slumped against the wall, sliding to the dirt floor. The adrenaline bled away, leaving me shaking. The clash of alpha auras, Owen's possessive fury, Francis's formidable resolve, still echoed in my nervous system. And beneath it, that terrifying, magnetic pull to Francis. A mate bond was a forced connection, a chain. This felt like finding a missing piece of a puzzle I never knew was empty, and it was just as dangerous. Hours seemed to pass. The moon climbed higher, and with it, the wolf inside me began to ache. It was too close to the full moon. The transformation wasn't due for 2 nights, but the stress, the fear, the proximity of other shifters was agitating it. My skin prickled as if covered in ants. My teeth throbbed. I clenched my jaw, fighting it. I will not shift. I will not lose control. The door opened silently. Francis stepped in, back in human form, wearing fresh clothes. He carried the night's cold on him and the faint, coppery scent of blood. Not his, I didn't think. His expression was grim. "Owen," I asked, my voice a dry croak. "Turned back at the border, for now." He looked at me, really looked, and his gaze dropped to my hands where my claws were unsheathing, retracting, unsheathing again, a nervous, involuntary tick. "You're fighting the shift." "I'm fine." "You're not." He knelt in front of me, his presence filling the tiny hut. "The moon's pull, the adrenaline, it's triggering a premature change. You have to let it surface a little, or it will break you." "I can't," I whispered, horror rising. "If I shift here in your territory, I'm claiming sanctuary. I'm involving you. Owen will use it as proof." "You're already involved." His voice was low. "Let me help you. An alpha can soothe the shift, guide it. Hold out your hand." It was a terrible idea. A vulnerable, intimate act for shifters. To let an alpha into your transformation was to give them a window into your very soul. I hesitated, the war inside me raging, the terrified human, the rebellious wolf, the lingering echo of Owen's cruel guidance. Another wave of pain lanced through me, my spine arching. A small, pained cry escaped. "Tessa!" Francis said my name not as a command, but as an offer, a lifeline. Trembling, I lifted my hand. He enveloped it in both of his. His skin was warm, his grip steady. And then he reached, not with his body, but with his will. A calm, immense power, like the deep, still heart of the forest, flowed from him into me. It didn't force my wolf down. It didn't dominate. It gentled. It surrounded the frantic creature inside me, showing it a still pond instead of a stormy sea. The pain receded. The claws retracted. The prickling fury of the change melted into a warm, humming awareness. I gasped, my eyes flying open, meeting his. In that connection, I felt it all, his strength, his loneliness, his rigid control, and a protective fury that mirrored my own. And I saw the same dizzying reflection in his eyes. He felt it too, the undeniable, impossible pull. He released my hand as if burned, standing abruptly, breaking the connection. The absence of his calming power was a physical chill. "It's stabilized for tonight." "Thank you," I breathed, the words inadequate. "Don't." He turned toward the door, his posture rigid. "This changes nothing. You can't stay." "I know." Owen will be back at first light with his entire pack. He'll demand you. By law and custom, I have to give you up." The hope that had flickered in the stone hut died. "Then why did you help me?" He looked back and his gray eyes were haunted. "Because when he comes," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to shake the stones, "I don't know if I can." The words hung in the cold air of the stone hut. "By law, I must return you at dawn. I don't know if I can." They were a promise and a prison sentence all at once. Tessa stared at Francis, the echo of his alpha command, a gentle, golden warmth that had stilled her screaming wolf, still humming in her bones. It felt nothing like Owen's brutal, possessive grip on her spirit. This had been a shelter, and that terrified her more than the hunt. A sharp, distant howl tore through the fragile silence. It wasn't a hunting cry. It was a demand. Owen's voice, twisted with fury, carried on the wind, slicing through the thick stone walls. "Tessa!" Every muscle in her body locked. The phantom pain of the claimed mate bond, a rusty chain around her soul, yanked taut. She gasped, doubling over on the cot, her hands flying to her chest. Francis was at the door in an instant, his back to her, a low growl rumbling in the space between them. "He's at my border," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Shouting your name to the trees, trying to pull you to him." "It hurts," she managed to grit out, the words frayed. The peaceful warmth Francis had instilled was now a battleground, fighting against the cold, invasive pull from the forest. "Fight it," Francis commanded, not turning. His attention was on the night. "You're in Blackwood. His voice holds no power here unless you give it to him." He listened for another moment. "Matthew, Emily, report." The sound of paws on hard-packed snow, then the shift of flesh and bone. Matthew's voice, tense but clear, came from outside the ivy curtain. "Alpha, he's at the old pine marker. 5 warriors with him. He demands an audience. Says he can smell his mate on our land." "He can smell his own failure," Francis muttered. Then, louder, "I'll meet him. Hold the line here. If any Ridge River wolf sets a paw past the marker, you know what to do." "Francis," Tessa whispered, the name feeling foreign and too intimate on her tongue. He finally looked back at her. In the gloom, his eyes glowed a faint, steady amber. Don't give me to him, please." He said he'd break me in front of the whole pack. It wasn't a threat. It was a plan. What happened next changed everything. Francis crossed the small space in 2 strides, kneeling before her. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a solid wall between her and the howling night. "Look at me." She forced her eyes to his. "You are under the protection of the Blackwood Alpha. That is not nothing. But you must be silent, you must be still. Your wolf must sleep. Can you do that?" She gave a shaky nod, her human mind clinging to the order, using it as an anchor against the bond's painful tug. "Good." He stood. "Dawn is in 4 hours. Until then, you are mine to protect." He turned and vanished through the frozen ivy curtain, leaving her alone with the echo of his words. "You are mine to protect." The sounds from outside were muffled, but she heard everything with the painful clarity of the hunted. The crunch of Francis's boots fading. The tense, low exchange between Matthew and Emily. "He's going to trigger a war for a female he just met," Matthew said, his voice thick with frustration. "Did you see her, Matt?" Emily's reply was softer. "Really see her? She's not just a female, she's a ghost. Owen Fletcher made a ghost. Our Alpha is many things, but he has never been cruel." "That's what I'm afraid of," Matthew sighed. His honor against Owen's rage. It's a bad equation. Silence fell, heavy and waiting. Tessa pulled the rough blanket around her shoulders, shivering. The stone hut was freezing, but the cold inside her was deeper. She focused on the memory of Francis's power, the golden warmth. It was the only light in a very dark room. If only she had known that light would draw more than just her. The old pine marker was a gnarled sentinel on the ridgeline, dusted in moonlight and snow. Francis approached in human form, a statement of control. He would not meet a rabid dog as a wolf. Owen Fletcher was a broad, brutal slab of a man, vibrating with barely contained fury. His 5 warriors flanked him, all in wolf form, lips peeled back from gleaming teeth. The stink of Ridge River aggression fouled the clean Blackwood air. "Francis," Owen spat, dispensing with any title, "you have something of mine." Francis stopped 10 feet away, a respectful, unyielding distance. "On my land, I have what I choose to have, Fletcher. You're shouting at my trees. It's undignified." Owen took a step forward, his boots cracking the ice. "My mate, Tessa. Her scent is all over this border. You're harboring a claimed female. You know the law." "I know many laws," Francis said, his voice calm as a frozen lake. "Including the one about treating a mate with care. I hear you've reinterpreted that one." Owen's eyes flashed pure venom. "How I discipline my own is no concern of yours. She's willful, needs a firm hand. She got scared during her first shift and ran. A childish tantrum. Now hand her over. Unless you want the blood of 2 packs on your hands for a useless latent." The word useless hit Francis like a spark on dry tinder. He remembered Tessa in the hut, not willful but defiant, not childish but profoundly brave. He saw the scars of fear, not of a tantrum but of torture. "She told me a different story," Francis said, letting a thread of alpha power weave into his words, enough to make the Ridge River wolves shift uneasily. "She told me you vowed to break her, publicly. Is that your idea of discipline, Fletcher? Or is it your admission that you can't control a female who's more wolf than you anticipated?" Owen's face darkened. A tell. Francis had struck a nerve. "You have no right to speak to her. The bond is mine. I can feel her. Your stink is all over her. What did you do?" Rage was overtaking strategy. "Perfect. I stopped her from shifting herself to pieces in terror," Francis stated flatly. "Something her own mate should have been able to do. You failed. She fled. She crossed into my territory and requested sanctuary. As Alpha, I am considering it." The air crackled. One of Owen's wolves, a massive gray, inched forward. A low, warning growl erupted from the tree line behind Francis. Matthew, holding the line. "Sanctuary," Owen barked a laugh, devoid of humor. "There's no sanctuary from a mate bond. You think you can keep her. She's mine. Every hour she's away, it eats at her. It'll drag her back to me, crawling if it has to. You're just prolonging her suffering." Francis knew he was right. The bond was a metaphysical fact. But looking at Owen, seeing the possessive glee in his eyes at the thought of Tessa's pain, Francis's decision, wavering in the hut, solidified into granite. "You will turn around," Francis said, his voice dropping into the register of absolute command. The alpha voice. The trees themselves seemed to lean in. "You will take your wolves and you will retreat to your side of the ridge. You will wait for my decision at dawn." Owen actually staggered back a step, the compulsion in the voice hitting him like a physical blow. His wolves whined. But Owen was an alpha too. He shook it off, his face purpling with outrage. "You dare give me orders. On my land, I dare everything." Francis took a single, deliberate step forward. The power radiating from him was a palpable force, pushing against the Ridge River aggression. "You are here on my sufferance. You howl her name again, you threaten my pack again, and dawn will bring you a war you are not prepared to fight. Not here. Not on my terms. Now, get off my border." The final 4 words were laced with such potent, territorial alpha energy that the snow seemed to vibrate. Owen's warriors tucked their tails, backing away. Owen himself stood, trembling with impotent fury, his eyes promising murder. "At dawn," Owen seethed, the words a vow. At dawn, you return what's mine, or I burn Blackwood to the ground to find her." He turned, shifting mid-stride into a hulking, russet wolf, and vanished into the shadows of his own territory, his pack slinking after him. Francis didn't move until the last scent of them had faded on the wind. He let out a long, slow breath, the steam clouding in the moonlight. The confrontation was over. The war was not. He had bought hours, not peace. Matthew emerged from the trees, human, his expression grim. "He won't wait for dawn, Alpha. He'll try to flank us to sneak in." "I know," Francis said, staring at the empty space where Owen had been. "Which is why we won't be here at dawn." Matthew blinked. "Sir, the safe house is compromised. He knows she's in this sector. We move her. Now." Francis finally looked at his beta. "We take her to the den." Matthew's eyes went wide. "The heart of the pack. Alpha, that's making a statement. That's not harboring, that's adopting. The pack will see her, they'll smell her, they'll feel the conflict." "The pack follows me," Francis said, already striding back toward the hut. "And they trust me to know what is worth fighting for. Get Emily. We move in 5. The journey was a blur of silent terror for Tessa. Francis wrapped her in a thick fur cloak that smelled overwhelmingly of him. Pine, snow, and deep, earthy power. A scent that mercifully dulled the constant, gnawing ache of Owen's bond. Emily led the way, a sleek gray wolf scanning the shadows. Matthew took the rear, a constant, grim presence. Francis walked beside Tessa, his hand a steadying pressure on her elbow whenever the terrain grew rough. They moved like ghosts through the deep blackwood. The forest changed, the pines growing thicker, older. She began to feel them. Not just see them, feel them. Wolves everywhere, eyes watching from the darkness. A low, curious hum of awareness that prickled against her skin. They were entering the belly of the beast. "The den is not a place we show outsiders," Francis said quietly, his voice barely disturbing the night. "It is our home. You will be safe there, but you will also be seen. My pack will have questions. You don't have to answer them. You answer only to me." His words were protective, but they coiled a new fear in her stomach. She was being taken from a hidden prison to a very public one. The pack would look at her and see a problem, a catalyst for war. A stolen mate. They descended into a wide, sheltered valley, invisible from the ridges above. And there it was, the Blackwood Den. It wasn't a cave, but a collection of low, sturdy lodges built among and around the bases of colossal sequoias, smoke curling from stone chimneys into the cold air. It felt ancient and alive. As they entered the clearing, activity ceased. Dozens of wolves, some in human form, some not, stopped and stared. The weight of their collective gaze was a physical pressure. Whispers rustled like leaves. "Alpha, Ridge River scent," the female. Francis never broke stride. "Matthew, clear my lodge. Emily, bring warm food and clothes." He guided Tessa firmly toward the largest central lodge, built into the side of a great tree. He didn't acknowledge the stairs, but his posture, the set of his shoulders, the tilt of his head, was a clear, unspoken command. "This is under my authority. Stand down." They entered the lodge. It was warm, dominated by a large fireplace. Simple, clean, powerfully masculine. It smelled like him. He led her to a chair by the fire. "Sit, warm yourself." She sank into the chair, the furs swallowing her. The silence between them was filled with the crackling fire and the muffled sounds of the unsettled pack outside. "Why are you doing this?" The question tumbled out, raw and desperate. "You heard him. He'll burn everything down for me, not because he loves me, because he owns me. And you're risking all of this." She gestured weakly at the lodge, the den beyond, for a stranger. A useless latent. Francis crouched before the fire, not looking at her. He poked at a log, sending up a shower of sparks. "When I heard your story, when I felt the terror in your shift, it wasn't about you being a stranger." He finally turned his head, and the firelight danced in his eyes. It was about what it means to be an alpha. Owen is a tyrant. He believes strength is the right to break things. I believe strength is the duty to protect things. Even and especially things that are not yours to protect. You are a test of that belief, Tessa. Her heart hammered against her ribs, his name for her, not female, not latent. Tessa. And at dawn, she whispered. At dawn, the law is clear, he said, his voice tight. But my conscience is clearer. I will not force you back into hell. Which means... A sudden, sharp commotion erupted outside, raised voices, a snarl. Francis was on his feet in an instant, a growl building in his own chest. The lodge door flew open. Matthew stood there, his face ashen. Alpha, you need to come. Now, report. Matthew's eyes darted to Tessa, full of something like pity. It's the pack. They're agitated. Old man Walter is demanding to see the female. He says he can smell it on her. He says it's impossible. Smell what? Francis barked. Matthew swallowed. He says she doesn't just carry Ridge River's claim. He looked directly at Francis, his voice dropping to a horrified whisper. He says she smells of a true mate bond, and it's not Owen Fletcher's scent. It's yours. The world stopped. The crackle of the fire, the wind outside, the very beat of Tessa's heart, it all froze. She stared at Francis. His face was a mask of utter shock, the alpha composure shattered. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, his eyes wide, his nostrils flaring as he instinctively drew in her scent. The mysterious pull, the profound calm in his presence. The way her wolf had settled for him, a stranger when it fought its own mate. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't sanctuary. If only she had known the truth wasn't a rescue, but a deeper, more dangerous claim. From outside, an ancient, cracking voice rose above the murmurs of the pack. Francis, bring her out. Let the pack see what you've brought to our den. Let us see the female who is doubly claimed. Francis's gaze locked with Tessa's, horror and a terrifying, dawning hope warring in his eyes. The cliff's edge they stood on had just crumbled away beneath them. The law, the war, Owen's rage, it was all just noise now. The real storm was here, inside her, inside him, and banging on the door. The words hung in the air of the great sequoia grove, colder and sharper than the mountain wind. A true mate bond, between her and Francis. The impossible truth, spoken by the old elder Walter, didn't feel like a revelation. It felt like a key turning in a lock deep inside Tessa's soul, a final, terrifying piece slotting into place. The magnetic pull, the calm, the sense of recognition, it hadn't been gratitude or desperation. It had been fate, laughing cruelly. Around them, the Blackwood pack erupted into a low, shocked murmur. The sound was a living thing, pressing in from all sides. Tessa couldn't look at Francis. She stared at the snow between her boots, feeling the phantom chains of Owen's claim tighten around her ribs in a vicious, jealous spasm. Two bonds, one forced, one true, and both would get her killed. Silence. Francis's voice was not a shout. It was a low, resonant command that vibrated through the ground itself. The murmuring ceased instantly. When Tessa dared to look up, his face was carved from granite, his gaze fixed on Walter. The old man stood unflinching, his milky eyes wide with certainty. "Explain yourself, elder," Francis said, each word precise as a blade. "The nose doesn't lie, Alpha," Walter said, his voice gaining strength. "I've smelled a true bond once before in my lifetime. It's not the stench of a forced claim, like the one on her that reeks of rage and possession. It's harmony. Two scents woven together so perfectly they create a third. I smell her on you, Francis. And I smell you on her, right down to her marrow, beneath the foulness that Fletcher painted over her. The pack feels the tension. They just don't have the years to name it. Francis's jaw tightened. He finally turned his head, and his silver eyes met Tessa's. In them, she saw the same storm of realization, the same furious denial, and beneath it, a dawning, helpless truth. What happened next changed everything. He didn't speak to her. He spoke to his pack. "The Ridge River Alpha comes at dawn, believing we hold his property," Francis announced, his voice carrying to the furthest listener. "He will find he is wrong. He does not hold a claim here. I do." A collective intake of breath swept through the den. Matthew and Emily, standing guard near the lodge steps, exchanged a look of sheer alarm. This was no longer about harboring a runaway. This was a declaration of a mate war. "My lodge," Francis said, his eyes never leaving Tessa's. "Now, Walter with us. Matthew, Emily, secure the perimeter. No one approaches." He turned and strode toward the largest lodge, not checking to see if she followed. The command in his aura was absolute. Tessa's legs moved automatically, her body thrumming with a wild, discordant energy. Owen's bond yanking her back toward the border, the new golden thread pulling her toward Francis, her own wolf howling in confusion beneath her skin. The pack parted for her, their stares heavy with awe, fear, and hostility. The inside of Francis's lodge was a reflection of the man. Simple, strong, dominated by a massive stone fireplace where a fire roared. The air was saturated with his scent, pine, cold stone, and alpha power. It should have been overwhelming. Instead, it felt like the first full breath she'd taken in months. The door shut behind Walter, sealing them in a tense, quiet space. Francis stood before the fire, his back to them. "Is it possible, Walter?" he asked, his voice rough. "With another's claim on her. The Moons will doesn't consult our petty laws, Alpha," Walter said, leaning on his cane. "A forced claim is a violence. A true bond is a fact. It exists. It has existed, likely since her first shift, buried under Fletcher's brutality. Her wolf knew. Yours did too. That's why you brought her here, not just for duty." Francis turned. The conflict in him was a visible tremor in his clenched fists. "Owen will feel it. If it's real, he'll feel the challenge and the bond." "He already feels her slipping from his grasp," Tessa whispered, finding her voice. It sounded cracked. "That's why he's so furious. It's not just defiance, it's competition." She wrapped her arms around herself, the truth settling like a lead weight. "He'll kill you for it. He'll raise this whole territory to ash." "He will try," Francis stated, a feral edge entering his tone. For the first time, she saw the warrior beneath the strategic alpha. "But his claim is an artifice. It can be broken." Walter nodded grimly. "Only by the death of the claimer or by the voluntary submission of the claimed. And she will never submit." "No," Tessa said, the word a vow. "I'll die first." Francis crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping a foot from her. He didn't touch her, but his proximity was a tangible force. "Look at me." She forced her eyes up. "You are not dying, not today. Not ever by his hand." He spoke with an absolute certainty that shook her. "But you must understand. At dawn, this becomes a fight for you. A mate challenge. If I win, his claim is severed by the Moon's own law. If I lose," he didn't finish. He didn't need to. "You're risking your pack, for me," she breathed, horrified. "I am leading my pack," he corrected, his gaze burning into hers. "An alpha who cannot recognize and fight for his true mate is no alpha at all. They will see that. Or they will follow me regardless." A frantic knock at the door broke the intensity. "Alpha!" It was Matthew. "Movement at the eastern tree line. A scout. They're not waiting for dawn." The air in the lodge shifted from personal crisis to immediate threat. Francis's eyes hardened into pure, tactical focus. "How many?" "Just the one. He's smelling the air, looking confused. He's caught the scent trail." "He's caught her scent, mixed with ours in the heart of our den," Francis said, a grim smile touching his lips. "He's reporting back to Owen that his worst suspicion is true. Good, let him." He looked at Walter. "Keep her here. Bar the door from the inside." "Where are you going?" Tessa asked, panic lancing through her. "To send a clearer message," he said, already moving. At the door, he paused. "The bond, Tessa. If it's there, reach for it. It's not a leash, it's a bridge. Your wolf will know." Then he was gone, the door closing firmly behind him. Walter slid the heavy wooden bar into place. The sounds of the den outside became muffled, distant. Tessa stood frozen, listening. She heard the low, gathering growl of the Blackwood pack, a sound like rolling thunder. Then, a single, enraged howl tore through the twilight from the eastern ridge. The Ridge River Scout, realizing he'd been discovered. What followed was a short, brutal symphony of snarls, a yelp of pain, and then silence. It was over in seconds. Francis's message was delivered. Trespassers would not be tolerated. Tessa sank into a chair by the fire, her body trembling. Walter settled opposite her, his aged face thoughtful. "He's a good alpha," the old man said quietly. "Stubborn, thinks with his heart more than he lets on, but strong. His father was the same." "I can't let them die for me," Tessa whispered, more to herself than to him. "You don't have that choice, girl," Walter said, not unkindly. "The bond chooses. The only choice now is how you meet it. Fight it and you'll weaken him. Accept it," he gestured vaguely. "You might just find the strength you've been running with all along. Accept it." She closed her eyes, trying to quiet the screaming panic in her mind. Beneath the ever-present, grating pain of Owen's claim, she searched. She felt for that thread of calm, that sense of home she'd felt since Francis found her in the snow. At first, there was nothing but her own fear. Then, like a faint, golden chord resonating through chaos, she felt it. It was warm. It was steady. It was anchored to a presence that felt immovable, a silhouette standing firm against a gathering storm. Francis. Her wolf, silent and cowed for so long, lifted its head inside her. A soft, answering whine echoed in her soul. "Mate," it whispered, the first clear thought it had ever sent her. Outside, a new sound began. It started as a single, deep howl from the watchtower, Matthew's voice. It was joined by another, and another, until the entire den was filled with a unified, rising chorus. The Blackwood War song. They were rallying to their alpha, to her. The door bar slid open. Francis stood there, backlit by torchlight. The scent of cold air and faint, coppery blood clung to him. His expression was fierce, alive. "They're coming! Now, the whole pack led by Owen." He felt the challenge. He looked at Tessa. "The pack stands, do you." She stood, her legs steady for the first time in days. The internal pull toward him was no longer a mystery. It was a compass. She took a step forward. "I'm not hiding in here." A flicker of pride crossed his face. He held out a hand, not an order, an offer. She placed her icy fingers in his. The contact was an electric current that shot up her arm, not painful, but vibrantly, overwhelmingly right. Owen's bond shrieked in protest, a dissonant scrape against her nerves, but it was drowned out by the resonant hum of the true connection. He led her out of the lodge, onto the broad porch that overlooked the central clearing. The entire Blackwood pack was assembled, shifted into their formidable warrior forms or standing ready in human form, armed with silver-tipped spears and grim determination. At the front, Matthew and Emily gave her a curt, respectful nod. The pack's eyes were no longer on her with suspicion, but with a protective ferocity. She was their alphas. That made her theirs. From the dark tree line at the edge of the den, figures emerged. Owen Fletcher, in human form, strode forward, his face a mask of incandescent rage. Behind him, At least 30 of his Ridge River wolves fanned out, growling, their eyes glowing with malice. The air grew thick with the stench of their aggression. Owen's gaze locked onto Tessa, then onto her hand, still clasped in Francis's. His control snapped. "You dare!" he roared, the sound echoing off the sequoias. "You steal what is mine and pollute it with your touch." Francis released Tessa's hand and took a single step forward, placing himself between her and Owen. "Nothing here is yours, Fletcher. You brought violence and called it a claim. The moon recognizes no such theft." "She bears my mark," Owen spat, his body beginning to shudder, fur rippling along his forearms. "I will peel your skin from your bones and make her watch before I break her for good." "You claim her?" Francis's voice dropped, becoming lethally quiet. A challenge howl, pure and undiluted, rose from his chest without warning. It was a sound of ancient law, of primal contest. The Blackwood pack fell utterly silent. The Ridge River wolves stilled. "Then I challenge you, Owen Fletcher, Alpha of Ridge River, for the true mate bond you have tried to defile, to the death. Do you accept, or do you slink away with the honor of a coward?" The ultimatum hung in the frozen air. A formal mate challenge could not be refused without utter forfeiture of status. Owen's eyes bulged. He looked from Francis's unwavering stance to Tessa, who held her head high, staring back at him with all the hatred she possessed. He saw her lack of fear. He saw the new strength in her posture. He saw, finally, that she was truly lost to him. With a roar that was pure fury, he began to shift. "I accept, and I will feast on your heart." Francis didn't flinch. He turned his head slightly, his eyes finding Tessa's for one last, searing moment. "Remember," he said so only she could hear, "the bridge." Then he moved, a blur of motion as he tore out of his clothes and shifted in midair. Where a man stood, a massive, sleek black wolf landed, larger than any in either pack, his silver eyes blazing with moonlit power. The two alphas collided in the center of the clearing, with a crash that shook the ground. The world narrowed to the whirl of fur, teeth, and blood. Tessa watched, her heart a trapped bird in her throat. Owen fought with vicious, uncontrolled rage, aiming to maim and torture. Francis fought with precision, power, and a terrifying, calm focus. He was defending, but also attacking, each movement efficient and devastating. But Owen was ruthless. He feinted, and as Francis lunged, he twisted, his jaws snapping closed on Francis's hind leg. A sickening crunch echoed. Francis let out a pained snarl. The Blackwood pack tensed, a collective growl rising. Agony, not her own, lanced through Tessa. It came through the golden thread, a white-hot spike of pain from Francis's leg. Owen's bond writhed, trying to flood her with perverse satisfaction. She staggered, clutching her chest. The bridge. Francis's words cut through the pain. Not a leash. A bridge. If only she had known how to use it sooner. She stopped fighting the new bond. Instead, she poured everything she had into it, all her fear, her hope, the fierce, protective love that had sparked to life for this wolf who fought for her. She sent it down that golden thread, a wave of pure, unwavering strength. In the clearing, the black wolf stumbled. Then he shook his massive head, and a new, deeper growl erupted from him. The pain in his eyes cleared, replaced by a fresh, incandescent power. He surged upward, throwing Owen off with impossible force. He fought now not just as an alpha defending his mate, but as a wolf empowered by her. Their connection thrummed between them, visible only in their synchronicity. When Owen lunged for Francis's throat, Francis was already moving, his own jaws closing around Owen's foreleg, biting down until bones shattered. Owen howled, this time in pain and dawning fear. He tried to disengage, to flee, but the challenge circle was sealed by the silent, watching packs. Francis gave him no quarter. The black wolf moved in for the final, decisive clash. It was not prolonged. One powerful leap, a twist in the air, and his jaws found their true mark, Owen's exposed throat. The crunch was final, absolute. Owen Fletcher's body went limp, then shifted back to human form in death, lying broken in the snow. A stunned silence blanketed the den. Then, from the Ridge River wolves, a low whine of submission began as they lowered their heads, their will broken with their alpha's life. Francis shifted back. He stood, bloodied and breathing heavily, his leg wounded but already knitting. He ignored the Ridge River wolves, ignoring everything. His silver eyes found Tessa. He limped toward her, each step a testament to his will. The packs parted for him. He stopped before her. The forced claim, that phantom chain that had bound her for so long, was gone, severed utterly. In its place was a vast, open space filled only with the golden light of the true bond, and her own free breath. He didn't speak. He simply reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. His touch was warm, real, and irrevocable. A single, triumphant howl erupted from Emily. It was taken up by Matthew, by Walter, by every Blackwood wolf until the ancient trees themselves seemed to sing with it. The sound wasn't just victory. It was acceptance. It was welcome. Tessa leaned into Francis's hand, the last of her terror melting away. She was home. The long flight was over. She was no one's runaway. She was Tessa of the Blackwood pack, and she would never submit again.